What happens when you stop chasing her? Not in anger, not in silence games, but with genuine detachment, when you truly let go? Most men assume she simply forgets, moves on, or replaces them. But the truth is often more complex and far more interesting. Emotionally, energetically, psychologically, something shifts. And in today's video, we're going to break it down piece by piece. Have you ever walked away from a woman, maybe out of self-respect or exhaustion, and days or weeks later she suddenly reaches out or becomes more curious? That's not coincidence. That's the result of removing pressure, removing need, and allowing her to feel your absence. Because when you stop chasing, you stop feeding the dynamic she was used to controlling, and that change affects her more than most men realize. This isn't about manipulation or reverse psychology. It's about reclaiming your emotional power and understanding how masculine stillness influences feminine response. When you stop proving, stop pursuing, and simply hold your frame, you don't lose her attention, you shift its direction. That's where true connection, or clarity, begins. Quick question before we get into it. Have you ever pulled back from chasing someone and noticed their energy change toward you? If so, tell us what happened in the comments. And if you're someone who values calm, self-respect, and stoic discipline in your relationships, type seductive wisdom below so we know you're aligned. Now let's dive into what she actually feels when you stop chasing. When a man stops chasing, it doesn't always create silence. It often creates presence. The moment you pull your energy back from someone who's used to receiving it, there's a shift, attention, effort, pursuit, all the things she didn't have to think about before suddenly go quiet. And in that quiet, something surprising begins. She starts to feel you more. This might sound counterintuitive. You'd think presence is felt when you're texting, calling, complimenting, showing up. But human psychology doesn't always work that way. Especially when a person has become accustomed to being pursued. When your energy is constantly available, it becomes part of the background. The moment you remove it, the absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. She begins to wonder, why did he stop? Was it something I said? Did he lose interest? And most importantly, why do I feel this gap? That's the emotional shift. It's not always conscious. It might start as a mild curiosity or even frustration. But over time, that space you left behind becomes a mirror, forcing her to reflect on how she really feels about you, now that she's no longer being pursued. There's power in absence, but only if it comes from calm detachment, not emotional withdrawal. If your silence is meant to punish or manipulate, she'll sense it. But if it comes from self-respect, if it's quiet, steady, and honest, it triggers something far deeper. It tells her, I'm no longer giving energy to something that isn't being returned. That message, even unspoken, changes how she sees you. Let's take a simple example. You've been the one reaching out, initiating, maintaining the connection. She enjoys it, maybe even expects it, but she doesn't match it. Then one day you stop. No anger, no goodbye, just presence removed. A few days pass. Then she sends a message. Hey, haven't heard from you. Everything okay? That's the shift in real time. She's not just noticing you're gone. She's noticing how your effort made her feel secure even if she didn't admit it before. Now that it's missing, she's not just reacting to the silence, she's reacting to the emotional space you used to fill. That's not manipulation. That's natural human psychology. We only value what we notice is missing. So understand this. Your absence only creates impact if your presence had meaning. If you gave with sincerity, your withdrawal holds weight. And that emotional shift she feels? It's often the beginning of seeing you not as someone who chases, but as someone who chooses where his energy goes. And that, more than anything, leaves an impression. In most early dynamics, the woman often sits in a position of passive reception, especially if the man is chasing. Compliments, texts, attention, effort, they all come her way. Even if she's not fully sure how she feels, she's getting something valuable: validation. And validation is a form of power. It tells her, I matter here. He wants me. I control the pace. But when that validation stops, when the man no longer seeks approval, responds quickly, or initiates, it's not just the attention that disappears. It's the feeling of control, and in that vacuum, uncertainty enters. The dynamic flips. She's no longer the one being sought. Now she's the one wondering, why did that shift? Uncertainty is emotionally activating. When you stop chasing, you remove the safety net she may have unconsciously relied on. That safety net said, he'll be there, I don't need to act. Now she has to consider her own role in the connection. She begins to reflect not just on you, but on herself. Did I take him for granted? Was I really interested, or just enjoying the attention? This shift can trigger a range of emotions: confusion, curiosity, even frustration. But what it always does is break the passive pattern. She can no longer float on the surface of the interaction. Without your pursuit propping things up, her own interest, or lack of it, is forced to emerge. You've effectively created a space where only genuine connection can remain. Let's consider a real-life example. You've been consistent, available, thoughtful. She responded but never quite matched your energy. Then you step back, fully and calmly. Days pass. She notices. The tone of her next message changes. It's shorter, a bit more careful, or maybe suddenly more open. Why? Because she no longer feels the power to assume. She's recalculating. Women are highly intuitive when it comes to social power. They can sense when attention is coming from need versus presence. And when that energy disappears without explanation, not out of anger but out of self-respect, it creates a gap they have to process. That gap isn't emptiness, it's structure, a new balance. So when you stop chasing, you're not creating silence. You're creating a new frame, one where power is no longer tilted toward validation but recentered around choice. Hers and yours. That's the point where real interest either grows or fades. Either way, you flip the script from proving your value to revealing it. Human attraction is rarely logical. It's emotional and often driven by contrast. And few things create more contrast than a man who was once actively pursuing, suddenly becoming still, not cold, not withdrawn, just still. This stillness doesn't signal rejection. It signals composure. And for a woman who's used to being chased, that shift can be quietly magnetic. Curiosity begins where certainty ends. When you were constantly present, available, giving, she knew where she stood. She didn't have to think much about it, but now she has questions. Not just about you, but about herself. Why hasn't he reached out? Has something changed? Is he seeing someone else? Did I misread his interest? Those thoughts don't come when you're talking. They come in your silence. Stillness is powerful because it leaves room for projection. When you're not explaining, clarifying, or chasing, she starts filling in the blanks. And the more composed you are, the more space she has to wonder. Was he actually more grounded than I realized? Did I overlook something valuable? This quiet doubt breeds interest, not in a manipulative way, but in a natural, emotional way. Let's be clear, this isn't about playing games. It's about presence through absence. When a man detaches without drama, a woman senses it. She feels that you're not avoiding her. You've simply stopped making her the center of your energy. That's where curiosity begins, not in punishment, but in peace. She starts to miss your calm. Here's a real-world reflection. You used to reply quickly, now you take your time. You used to initiate plans, now you're simply living. And she notices not just your distance, but your discipline. That emotional restraint signals depth, A man who doesn't react emotionally to space is a man who holds internal power. And that's intriguing. Think of it like this. Interest that's always present becomes expected. But interest that steps back, intentionally, respectfully, becomes valuable. She doesn't chase the man who's always chasing her. She chases the man who no longer needs to, because that's the man who seems to have something deeper, something she now wants to understand. So when you stop chasing and enter stillness, you don't become invisible. You become interesting. You shift from someone who's always available to someone whose energy now has weight. And weight creates gravity, not because you're pulling her in, but because she's leaning forward on her own. There's a quiet power in a man who no longer asks, "Does she want me?" and instead begins asking, "Do I want this?" That shift from chasing external validation to standing in internal clarity is where true respect begins. And make no mistake, women notice. They may not say it out loud, but when a man reclaims his energy, his time, and his focus, it changes how they see him. When you choose yourself, you send a signal, not with words, but with behavior. You're no longer reacting, overreaching, or trying to earn affection. You're operating from standards, not scarcity. That shift says, I don't chase people who are unsure about me. I move toward those who move toward me. It's not harsh. It's honest. And women respect men who have the courage to draw that line. She may have once seen you as emotionally available, but now she sees you as emotionally grounded. There's a difference. Availability can come from need. Groundedness comes from self-worth. And the moment she sees you step back without bitterness, without complaint, and without begging, she sees a different man. One who values himself enough to walk without punishing. Let's look at it practically. You used to be quick to respond, eager to engage. Now, you respond on your time. You're not cold, just centered. You used to work to earn her interest. Now, you let her show hers. That adjustment may confuse her at first, even challenge her, but underneath that, a deepening of respect. Respect doesn't come from how much effort you give. It comes from what you won't sacrifice to be liked. Your time, your energy, your peace, those are not bargaining chips. When you start protecting them, she starts seeing you less as a man chasing a moment and more as a man living by principle. And that contrast creates admiration, even if she doesn't express it outright. From a Stoic perspective, choosing yourself isn't a reaction to rejection. It's a return to alignment. You're not walking away to teach her a lesson. You're walking back into your own space, your own standards. And in doing so, you teach by example. This is how I value myself. If you'd like to join, I welcome you. If not, I still stand. So yes, when you stop chasing and start choosing, you may lose her attention. Or you may gain something better, her respect. And once a woman starts respecting you, the dynamic is never the same. Because now, it's not about who wants who. It's about whether you both truly deserve each other. It's a pattern many men notice, often with surprise. You stop texting, you stop checking in, you stop trying. And just when you fully let go, not out of frustration but out of clarity, she returns. Sometimes subtly, sometimes directly. But the question remains, why? The answer lies in a truth most men overlook. Emotional space creates emotional pull. When you detach with intention, you break the loop of predictable behavior. She no longer knows exactly where she stands with you. And in that uncertainty, her attention shifts inward. She starts noticing what your presence used to provide. Validation, warmth, focus. Now that it's gone, she has to feel the contrast. And that contrast often brings her back. It's not always about missing you specifically. It's about missing the version of herself she experienced around you. The feeling of being admired, the steady energy you brought, the calm presence that, for a while, she may have taken for granted. When those things disappear, something in her gets activated, not by strategy, but by emotional recognition. Let's use a real example. You stopped reaching out weeks ago. Out of nowhere, she messages, "Hey, how have you been?" That message isn't about catching up. It's about checking the temperature. Are you still there? Do I still matter? She's not always aware she's doing this, but that's the emotional mechanism at play. It's a pull created by absence. But here's the part most men miss. She doesn't come back because you played a game. She comes back because your energy withdrawal was authentic. It didn't come from bitterness, it came from alignment. And because there was no drama, no accusations, no needy messages, it allowed her to return without shame. That's why stillness, not silence, creates space for return. From a Stoic lens, this return isn't a victory, it's a reflection. Her coming back doesn't mean you win, it simply reveals that your self-respect was louder than your need for attention. And when you receive her energy again, it's not to be celebrated blindly, it's to be observed calmly. Because detachment teaches you this. If they return, good. If they don't, better. So yes, when you stop chasing, she may come back. But by the time she does, you're not waiting, you're watching. Not because you want to punish her, but because now you understand your worth isn't proven by attention received, but by peace maintained. And from that mindset, you don't react, you decide. There's a major difference between cutting someone off to hurt them and detaching to protect your peace. One is reactive, the other is grounded. And that difference is the mark of a man who isn't just walking away, but walking in alignment with his values. That's Stoicism in motion, calm, deliberate, and free of emotional chaos. Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you no longer cling to outcomes. You accept what's out of your control and act only on what is. You're not shutting down emotionally. You're simply not leaking energy into places where it's not respected. And that restraint, though quiet, speaks loudly. When a woman sees you detach, not with bitterness, but with clarity, she sees a man who isn't ruled by emotion. That doesn't make you distant. It makes you disciplined. In a world full of emotional overreaction, a man who can step back without creating drama becomes instantly memorable. You leave not with noise, but with presence. Think about it. True strength isn't in chasing, pleading, or forcing connection. It's in being able to say, I respect myself enough to walk, and I don't need to explain why. That level of emotional maturity doesn't burn bridges. It simply moves in silence. And when you walk that way, people remember not just that you left, but how you left. This is where Stoicism separates the man from the boy. A boy disconnects because he can't handle discomfort. A man detaches because he knows discomfort is temporary, but self-respect is permanent. He doesn't act from spite. He acts from centered stillness, and that's what allows him to maintain peace, even while letting go. So if you've stopped chasing and you're wondering what's next, it's not silence. It's stability. You don't wait. You don't chase. You don't play games. You simply move forward with strength. And if she circles back, you meet her from your frame, not your past feelings. Because the man who walks away with peace never begs for return. He chooses it, or he doesn't. Detachment is power, not because it closes your heart, but because it protects it. And when a man protects his peace, he no longer needs control to feel safe. He just needs truth. And once you have that, nothing and no one can pull you out of your frame. When you stop chasing, you don't just step back from her, you step back into yourself. And that shift is where clarity, strength, and real connection begin. Whether she comes back or not becomes secondary. What matters most is that you stopped moving out of need and started moving from self-respect. That's not loss. That's leadership. Women feel it. The emotional stillness, the quiet discipline, the absence that speaks louder than attention. And even if they never say it out loud, They remember the man who walked, not with anger, but with peace. Because in a world full of men who chase validation, the one who chooses himself stands apart. If this message hit home, drop seductive wisdom in the comments to let us know you're moving different now. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's ready to stop chasing and start choosing. Until next time, stay centered, stay steady, and never forget: the most attractive man in the room is the one who needs nothing from it.